Hello, welcome to Scratch 3D Printing. This video will be the ultimate guide for getting started with OrcaSlicer. Let's scratch today's topic. In this video, you will learn how to install OrcaSlicer, where to get the information for OrcaSlicers, learn all the features that OrcaSlicers have, adding your 3D printers to OrcaSlicers, getting all the filaments, knowing most of the print setting on OrcaSlicers. I will guide you through everything that you need to know about OrcaSlicer, so that you will get a pretty good understanding of how to use OrcaSlicers, and so you can use the slicer on your own without much trouble. At the end of the video, I will show you some tips and tricks on how to calibrate your 3D printer so that you will have the best result for 3D printing on your own machine. This video is going to be quite long, so I hope you are ready for it. And just so you know, most of the settings on these slicers, you don't really need to touch, and you will still get really good 3D printed parts. With that said, let's jump right into the video. Before we get into OrcaSlicer, this is their GitHub page and they have new releases all the time. So how do you get to the releases? Well, I will leave this link in the description down below. So if you want to have access to this and see all the new changes that they add to the new updates, this will be it. But OrcaSlicer also has their own websites now, which is OrcaSlicers.com. So this is OrcaSlicer's official website, and you can go here and download the latest stable release. So if we go down a little bit, we can see release right here. I'm going to click this 65 releases, and here you can see all the releases that they have put into OrcaSlicers. So this is the latest version right here. They added so many things to this version 2.3. So if you go all the way down to the bottom, you will see assets right here. Find the ones that fits your computer and download. For me, it will be Windows. So I'm going to download this Windows installer. So once you have this installer download, click it, open it, run it, like you usually do with any programs. And then once you've done all of that, it will bring you to OrcaSlicers right here. So first of all, when you open OrcaSlicer, it will bring you to this page. So first thing that you want to do is create a new project right here, where if you have a .3mf file that you download from somewhere else, you can click open project and open that profile. But for this, I'm going to be creating a new project. So once we get into our new project, and you don't have any 3D printers, it will prompt you with the 3D printers page. So to get to that page, if it's not popping up for you, we can go up here, see the printer up here, go to the right, see these sliders. We can click on that. Wait a bit, this might take a while because it has to load in all the 3D printers. So once you select that, or when this window pops out, you can search your 3D device right here. So for me, I have an Ender 3 V3, so I'm just gonna put Ender 3 and find it. Ender 3 V3 right here. So I'm gonna be selecting the 0.4 because that's the nozzle that is on my Ender 3. If you have a different types of nozzle, you can go ahead and select that. So once you selected that, click confirm, and now your 3D printer will be up here. If you want to add more, just click this button again, and then you can add more. The next step down is your filament. If we look here, it's number 1. That's one filament. We look to the right, we can see this drop down. Click that, and system presets. You are not going to get any of the user presets yet because you have not created them. For me, I did. But once you selected your 3D printer, it will have most of these system presets. And if you want to get more, it will be the same thing. We come to the right here, see this slider, set filament to use, click this, wait for it to load, and you can see all the filaments right here, from any cubic to bamboo, creality, all the filament that OrcaSlicer supported. So any filaments that you have here, you want to select them, just click it, check the box, and then just click confirm. And then once you go back and check your filament, you will have all these presets. So if we keep going down, you will see your system presets here, 0.12, 0.16, 0.2, 0.24. That is the system presets that come with OrcaSlicers, or comes with the 3D printers that the company provided on their settings presets. For me, I have a couple of user presets because once you added them, you can create your own presets. So now that we got over the basic things right there, let's go in depth with the printers, filament, and your setting. Okay, before we get into anything of OrcaSlicers, you want to know your tab up here. Your prepare tab is going to be a place where you look at your model, move your model, You paint your model, you do your support, you change all your settings. That's where this is gonna be. So once you've done that, you click Slice Plate, and then it's gonna bring you to the preview. You can click Preview, or you can click Slice Plate. Let's click Preview, and then it will bring you to your preview page, which is the same as your Slice Plate. It will show you, you can move up and down, you can move back and forth, see how your model is going to be printed. You can see your key right here on the top right. You have line time, you can see your inner outer wall sparse infill, top surface, and stuff like that. Check these boxes to see the movement of how your 3D printer is going to move. You can check your filament, your speed of how fast you're printing, your layer height, line width, and all of this stuff. Temperature, fan speed, and stuff like that. So this is your key, and it's very important that you know that this exists here, so you can check the flow rate, the speed, and all of the good stuff right there. Next tab is going to be your device. For me, I don't have anything here because my device is off. But if your device is on, you will have access to your device. You can see your camera. You can manually move them. You can see your temperature. You can see all your files, your previous file. You can see everything about your temperature. And the last one is your project. I don't have any project here, but if you have project, you can edit your project here. So that's pretty much all the tabs up here. File here, you can do new project, open previous project, recent. You can import project, you can export project, and all of the good stuff. And here's gonna be your tools for cutting, redo, undo, and stuff like that. Copy, paste. You can see all of them right here. View, you can do default view, top view, front view, but you can also use this cube down here and do it so much faster. You can change your preferences, change the language, change all of these settings here, enable dark mode, enable light mode, but just do dark mode so that we won't go blind. There's a help option here. You can check for updates and all of that stuff. Okay, with that done, let's go ahead and jump into the printer setting. If you want to edit your 3D printers or change stuff within your 3D printers, we can look right here in the 3v3 and the pencil next to it, we can click to edit its presets. So for this window here, it's your printer setting. The first thing is the basic information, machine G-code, multi-material, extruder 1. If you have more extruder, there might be extruder 2, extruder 3. But for me, before the end of 3v3, there's only one extruder, motion ability, and notes. Let's start with the basic information. The first thing that you can see under basic information is printable space. This is your X and Y printable area for your 3D printer. So we can come here and click set. We can see that for the end of 3v3, the size is 220 by 220. If you want to edit that, change that, you can do it here. Next down is the excluded bed area. This is going to exclude the area from your 3D printers that you don't want to be printed. But usually, just leaving this as 00 is fine. You don't really need to mess with it unless you modify your 3D printer. The next one is the printable height. This is how high your 3D printers can go. For the end of 3v3 is 250. It asks you, does it support multi-bed types? It's automatically checked yes, so just leave it at that. And it doesn't really matter what the bed type is. You can put any types of bed on your 3D printers and just leave it at what it is. That's what I do. So as you can see here, there aren't that much that we need to change unless we modify our 3D printers. But one of the most important things that people changes, and I sometimes do, is the Z offsets right here. If you want to know more about what this is, you can hover over the title and it will show you exactly what this is going to be doing if you change the value of this. Most people are going to be changing the Z offsets based on what their 3D printers is doing. If your 3D printer is printing a little bit higher, you want a negative value. If your 3D printer or your nozzle is way too close to the bed, you want a positive value so that your print head is going to go up a little bit higher when it starts printing. Next thing down here is the advanced, the G-code flare for your 3D printers. Then the 3v3 uses Clipper, which is most of 3D printers now uses Clipper, and these things down here, we don't really need to mess around with them. Everything in the basic information is pretty well set, so we don't really need to mess with it. Machine G-code, this is gonna show you a little bit of what your start G-code and G-code, your stop, before layer change, pause, stuff like that. But it doesn't really tell you much because it only has the word pause. If you want to edit more of this, you need to go into the printer's file and edit the G code inside itself. So we don't really need to mess with this machine G code. I'm just showing you what this is. Multi-materials. If your 3D printer supports multi-materials, you want to mess around with this a little bit. Manual filament change or stuff like that. Or if it has a changing system, you don't need a manual filament change. If you want to wipe tower, purge tower, you can enable, disable here. So if you want to edit something, take the time, re-study what they meant, and you will be perfectly fine. Next one is the extruder. This sometimes is important if you want to change your nozzle diameter. But usually if you want to change your nozzle diameter, you just want to select your 3D printers from the previous window a 0.6mm nozzle instead of changing this one value itself, because when you select that, it changes many other values. So I'd rather start from there than manually changing everything myself. But what you can change is the layer height limit. Some software will limit you to about 0.2 on your minimum layers. OrcaSlicers here limit you to 0.1 for the end of 3v3 and maximum at 0.35. If you want to do a 0.4, you just need to change this number to 0.4, and then you can go to your quality setting over here and change the layer height to 0.4. But for this, 0.35 is fine. Your retraction length, you can edit here, or you can select individual filament and edit there, which I will show you a little bit later on. So for your 3D printers, retraction speed and stuff is all right here, Z-hop and stuff like that. So for your Z-hop, if you want a Z-hop, you can do it. If you don't want it to Z-hop, just disable it. But Z-hop is good, so just leave it at default. Unless you are trying something new, you can mess around with all of these. Motion ability is how fast your 3D printers can move. From the factory setting, it has been the maximum value that your 3D printers can handle. And for the jerk limitations, I usually just leave the jerk alone because these values are pretty good. The nodes is just adding nodes, so I don't usually use this, but if you want to, you can go ahead and use it. So now that you know how to change the printer setting, we can go a step further. So if you look right here, there's like a Wi-Fi bar connection. You want to click that. If you want your 3D printers to be connected to OrcaSlicer, and if your 3D printer is supported like the Ender 3v3, which is supported Octo and Clipper, all you need to do is just find the IP address of your 3D printers, paste it here, and if your 3D printer supports Clipper, and if it's an Ender 3v3 or from Creality, you can do :4408 as a port number for fluid. Once you have done that, you can click test. Well, it shows this error because my 3D printer is off, but usually it will say connection successfully. So by doing this, you can slice your file and send the file to your 3D printers and print automatically without having to transfer to a USB and then put it to your 3D printers. And you can see here, this bed type right here. You can choose your bed types based on what you have on your 3D printer. But for me, I feel like this doesn't really matter. So I just leave it at this and then just change it in the setting later on. So now we are completely done with the printer setting. Next, we're gonna go on to the filament setting. As you can see here, we only have one filament. So let's say you have a 3D printer that can do multicolor printing and you need more filament. How do we get it? Well, look at the filament right here. We go to the right, we see a row of filament with a plus, click it, and then we have 2 filament right now. Click one more time, we get 4. We can go as high as we want. To delete this filament, we can just click the minus and then we'll just go backward like this. And as you can see right here, once we add 2 filament, we have this flushing volumes that comes up. We can click that, and here you can change this number to how much filament you want to flush out before printing with the next color. If you want to, usually I just leave this number at default and just increase the multiplier down here to 0.4, 0.5, or if you want to waste less filament, change it to 0.1. But by doing that, the color bleed like red into white, making it pink, will occur a lot more. If you increase the number, you will waste more filament, but you will get the color that it is supposed to be. Next, if you want to change the color of the filament, you can see number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Click the number, and then this color window will pop out. and you can select any color you want. Right here with this slider, with this color selector, you can select any color you want. To edit the filament, we can click the pencil next to the filament. Click that, it will bring you to your material setting. You can change what kind of materials you are using right here. So here we have filament, cooling, setting override, advanced, multi-materials, dependency, notes. Let's start with filament. So filament here is just gonna have your basic information like what type of filament it is. For me, I'm selecting PTG, vendor, generic, or you can change this to whatever you will have bought your filament from. Usually, if you really want to get technical, you can change that, but I just leave those at default. It doesn't really matter what brand of filament I'm using, to be honest. And now we can come down here. Diameters, if you have a different size, you will want to change it here. Density, shrinkage, stuff like that, just leave it at default. The price, if you want to get technical, you can change that. Recommended temperature nozzle printing is this, but this does not change your nozzle temperature. It's just a recommendation. We can go down a little bit more. Flow, ratio, and pressure events. You don't really want to mess with these numbers before you do your flow ratio calibrations, which you can easily do on OrcaSlicer, and I will show you exactly how to do that. Pressure events, if you want to enable this, I will recommend you do pressure events calibration first and then enable this. Change this number to what your calibration tells you. But before that, just keep this disabled. Printer chamber temperature. If your 3D printer has an active heater chamber, you can change this based on your filament types, like the K2+. I can change this to like 40C for printing PTG. But if your 3D printer doesn't have a heated chamber, just leave this at 0. Even if you change this, it doesn't really matter. Okay, now here is your nozzle printing temperature. So the first layer and other layer, there's two differences. So for the first layer, if you want your nozzles to be cooler, you can set it to 240. You want to be a little bit hotter so that it bonds a little bit better to the build plate, you can change this to 260. But once after the first layer has done printing, your nozzle printing temperature will go down to whatever this value is for other layers. The bed temperature. You need to look carefully at this because it will matter what you select up here on your printers. For the bed type, I have selected smooth high temperature plate. In order to have the proper value, you need to find it. So for me is this one right here, smooth PI plates / high temperature plate. So if I change this number, it will change the temperature when I print on my 3D printer. But if I change this number up here and don't change this number, it doesn't work. It depends on what you pick on your printer setting up here. For me, I usually just put 70 and I just do it for everything like this so that, even if the setting up here is not correct, everything is 70, so it just works easily like that. And then the most important thing is your volumetric speed right here. If the filament is a high printing filament or high speed PLA, you can crank this up to 23, 32. If your hardened can support it, you can do that. But usually around 18 to 23 is like a really good number and it prints super fast for most of the 3D printers out there. And I will show you something that has annoyed me for the longest time later on in this video, which has something to do with the maximum volumetric speed. The next setting is cooling. So for this, if you are printing with warping filament, you usually don't want cooling for the first couple of layers, but for 99% of my printing, I just leave this at default. Unless I'm doing like PP printing, PC printing, stuff like that, I might change this to like no cooling for the first 5 layers. It all depends on you. Full fan speed at layer 0, right? So it just layer here, but since you have this, it's gonna override this and it does not do the full fan speed at layer 0 before it reaches layer 3. The next one is part cooling fan. It will have your minimum fan speed and your maximum fan speed right here. So if you set this to 100, it will do 100% of your part cooling fan, which is the fan on top of your nozzle. Your maximum fan speed and your minimum fan speed. So for my experiments, I have messed around with the max fan speed And if you change this to 1, I will load in model and show you exactly what it meant. So back then when I tried to print really fast, I changed that to 1 second. And what does that mean? Well, if we look at this, for this layer right here, for this inner wall right here, each time that it goes around there, it's gonna be less than 1 second. So that means that it prints very fast with little cooling, and that leads to very bad 3D printing. Unless you're trying to achieve the fastest print in the world, you don't really want to set that to 1. Leaving at 5 is pretty good enough. Next is the keep fan always on. If you want to keep your fan on, just check this box. These are pretty self-explanatory of what it meant. Slow down for better layer cooling. Yeah, that is good. This is one of the things that I love OrcaSlicer, adding it to OrcaSlicer. I've been struggling with this don't slow down outer wall here for the longest time. And the setting just doesn't exist, but now it does exist on OrcaSlicers. So if you check this box and we go back to slicing the plate here, we can change the line type to speed right here. And as you can see here, the first couple layers is different color, but the rest of the color for the model here is the same color. It does not slow down for the outer layer printing. And with this, you can have consistent layer, the same color layer, and your film color will be the same. If the film is printing slower and some places printing faster, it will result in a matte finish or like a gloss finish, and you will have like 2 different color tones. So we're gonna uncheck this and go back to see it, what I mean. Look at this. The top of these 3 pins right here is blue. And if we look at the key up here, it's 10mm speed. So once it gets here, it prints very slowly, but usually you want this for small parts so that it has the time it needs to cool and it has the quality that it needs to be. So having that enabled is good, but if you're not printing something like this, you're printing something different, that option is really useful. Next is your minimum print speed, your forced cooling for overhang, your overhang cooling activation threshold, and stuff like that. You can change this number to your liking. We can go down here, auxiliary part cooling fan. This is your side fan. For the Ender 3v3, it does have an auxiliary part cooling fan. So you can set this to whatever percent you want and your side fan will blow. The exhaust fan is the back of your 3D printers. Like the K2 Plus, it has exhaust fan where it blows stuff out. This is where you will set your percentage of what you want the fan to run. Okay, so that's pretty much all about all the cooling. The next one is going to be setting overrides. Here, you have another retraction. So at this point, you might think, why is there 2 retraction? There's a retraction in my printer setting. There's a retraction in the material setting. Yeah, that's why it says override. Even if you have like, 1mm on your printer setting, you can check this box right here and overwrite that. And you can change it here, which I tend to do most of the time because by doing this, I can do it for each individual filament instead of just having like a set 0.5mm retraction length for everything. This is a lot better and more control. You can enable all of these or disable all of these and change them however you want. So this is very important if you are printing with different types of filament all the time. You can enable these and change them however you want. Retraction length, Z-hub height, the type, the Z-off lift, stuff like that. Retraction speed, and this will result in less stringing and make your 3D printed part a lot better. So you can go ahead and mess around with your retraction. There is also another retraction test which I will show you later on too. The next part is the events. Like I said, this you can't really mess around with it because you can't really edit anything besides just looking at this. So events, I usually just leave this like this unless you know exactly what you're doing. Multi-materials, you are printing with more than one material, you can edit here. The wipe tower parameter, you can change this to make the purge on the wipe tower bigger or smaller, or the amount of purge that you are going to wipe on your tower. Tool change, only like a couple of 3D printers have tool change, so don't really need to mess with this unless you have a tool change 3D printer. Dependency, just leave it. and nodes, put whatever you want here. So how do you get your user presets? Well, you don't have a preset yet, so let's just take the generic PLA for example. To do that, you can do a couple of ways. You can just click this save right here and then just rename it. You cannot name it like this because that will overwrite a system profile and it's not allowed. So you just change this to whatever you want. So what I usually do is just like mine right here, just like, hey, it's mine. And you cannot have a space at the end. It does not allow that. So once you have this, click OK, and then it will save to your user presets. The other thing is, if you change something in the setting like this, I'll just put this to 5, it will have this revert back right here. And if you don't do that, you close the program, it will say, do you want to save this? You can answer yes or no. That's just how it's saved. And one last thing that I recommend all of you do is to enable events right here. When I first started using OrcaSlicers, I just disabled this and it frustrated me because I can't see all the settings that I want. I cannot find it anywhere, and once I enable events, all these information just pop up my face and I was like, what is all of this? So I recommend you click on events, enable events all the time, and try to learn as much as you can from the beginning. It will be a lot, but trust me, you will feel so much better knowing that you have all the options here instead of just having like one options for everything. Okay, we are done with the filament setting and stuff like that. So now we are on to the process or your printing setting. Once again, enable events here, because if you don't enable events here, you cannot edit your speed. So whatever the speed is set here, it will just print at that speed, either super fast or super slow, and it will be annoying and you will be frustrated like how I did. So the best advice I can give to you is enable events and just try to learn stuff as you use this. So with that said, let's continue. Same thing, your system presets and your user presets. You can click the save to create your own user presets. You can click minus to delete it. There is a search button right here in case you didn't notice. You can click this and you can search for anything that you want. So let's say I cannot find where the speed is. I can type speed and everything that is involved in speed will come up right here. All you need to do is just click. It will take you to exactly where it is and it will even highlight it. Look at that. If we do that again, the seam wipe speed, if you look down there, it's gonna blink green like that. It's showing you exactly where it is, which is so cool. The first settings that we see here is quality. So the quality of your 3D printed parts. The first setting here is layer height. This is the layer height stacking on top of each other when your 3D printer is printing. The important part is you have two options here. First, layer height. So this is your very first layer. So if we look at here, scroll all the way down, it's your first layer right here. That is your first layer height. If we change the key up here, layer height, you can see that there's 2, 0.2 and 0.4, and your first layer is 0.2. So that's your first layer height and your layer height. So if we change this to 0.3, slice the plate, and now we have a different result right here. Your first layer is still going to be 0.2, but your other layer is going to be yellow. So that is about 0.3 layer height. The next is the line width. So the line width is how thick your line is. If we look at the model again, is how thick your line is right here. So this is about 0.4-ish millimeter thick of line. If you change this to 0.1, it will be super thin, and I don't really recommend this because most of the time your printer will be jammed. And I try this and my printer gets jammed most of the time. So I usually just keep these at default. Unless it's the first layer, you can change the first layer to like 0.4 or even 0.38 to make it a little bit smaller so that it's a little bit closer to what you have modeled on your 3D modeling software. But most of these, you can change them like a couple millimeters. Don't change them too much. It might clog your 3D printer or it might result in a bad print. The next setting down here is your seam. So what is a seam? Well, we can click slice plate again. It will be a lot of this back and forth thing, so bear with me. I'm going to go to line type here, and the seam is your white line right here. So over the years, the seam has become really good at stacking on top of each other like this. It's not like a zigzag anymore. It's just straight, and the seam is being really good these days. It's like aligning to the sharpest angle. So if you change this to the nearest, look at that, the nearest. So what is the nearest? It's the nearest to the next layer. So if your 3D printer is gonna be right here, it's gonna go here, it's gonna finish here, and then it's gonna go here, resulting in these random seams like this. And this will make your model look really bad. So usually I just put it to align and just leave it at that. It will align itself, making my life for 3D printing so much easier. And it looks so much cleaner. Stagger in a seam. If you want to mess around with seam, you can mess with the inner stagger seam, the seam gap, scarf joint seam, which is very nice these days. It's like almost making your seam disappear, but 3D printing, your seam cannot be disappear. You have a couple of settings for your scarf joint seam, which is the contour hole and the contour. So I'm gonna pick contour and hole. So it's gonna do the scarf joint seam for every single seam that there is with this model here. But as you can see here, it still looks really similar to none, right? So like I said, you don't really need to mess with this. The seam gap is how far your start and your stop of your print goes. So 10%, it's like super minimum. So I'm gonna put it to 5 millimeters. You can do millimeter or percent. And we can look at this right now. Yeah, look at that. It's just making this so much weird. And the seam is like gone, but it's not gone. So it starts right here. It's gonna finish right here because that's 5 millimeters. And it just look really bad. So I don't really suggest you do this. Just put it at 10% and leave it at default. For me, it's good enough. But if you want to change it, go ahead and change it. And these settings down here, you don't really need to mess around with them because it's good at default. The precision is like 0.0 millimeters of your 3D models. Like the precise wall and the precise Z height. It's like very precise, and I feel like the default of this is really good. Over the years, people have developed this and has changed these, making it so much better, and we users don't really have to change with this unless we really wanted to. So you can go ahead and read these, what they are, and change them, change them, print, so that you can know exactly what to do with it. I don't use this. Like I said, most of these settings don't really need to be messed around with, and you still would have a good 3D print. So don't worry about many of the settings here because leaving at default is really good. I have not used these, and my 3D printed parts has turned out really amazingly. Ironing, for me, sometimes ironing takes way too long. So ironing is kind of like what you are doing in real life. If your shirt is crooked and stuff like that, you can use an iron it out so that it's smooth. It's just like that. Ironing here is just the top surface. Ironing is not worth it, and sometimes it loads very slowly if you have bigger parts. Look at this. So after it printed the top layer here, it's gonna go over one more time and slowly iron it out. So basically smooth the top layer out. I've tested this a couple times and I feel like ironing versus non-ironing. Ironing makes the model looks weird and it doesn't really look that much better. I recommend just turning off the ironing. Next one is wall generator. So wall generator, over time, it has become really good with this arcane style. The classic, you don't have any setting, but the arcane style is really nice. So just leave this at arcane and you will have a really great wall. And arcane is a lot stronger than the classic style and you have so much more setting to mess around with it. I haven't really messed around with these features yet, so I'm not quite sure what all of them is, but I still get really good prints and strong print without even messing with this. But there's like a whole wiki page of what this arcane is. I'll leave a link down below and you want to go very deep into the wall generator. But with this, you can see that when we slice the plate, the wall is stacking on top of each other really nicely and it's generating all the walls very precisely here. And it's already really good. We don't really need to mess around with this. If you want to fill these gap, you can do it, but it's gonna take lots of time and to get all of this to fill up. But this is very minimum and it doesn't really affect the print quality. So let's go on to the next one, wall and surface. So this is important right here. If you want to change the wall surface, change this one right here. Inner, outer, outer, inner, inner, outer, inner. So what is this? Well, if we look at this right here, I have it select to inner, outer. So it's gonna print the inner, which is the yellow line, and then the outer, which is the orange line. I have found that inner outer gives you better tolerance overall than outer inner, because once the material is extrude, sometimes it expand a little bit further. Let's say you do 0.4, but maybe it expand a little bit and it's 0.41 or 0.415 or 0.411 or whatever it is. So doing the inner layer first and then the outer layer is a lot better, and it makes your 3D printed part looks a little bit more cleaner. Or if you want to, you can print the infill first, but I don't really recommend this because if you do the infill first, there's nothing that is holding the infill inside. So as you can see here, it's doing the infill first, and by doing this, the material might expand outward a little bit here, and then once it gets to the inner wall right here, it's gonna go over the infill and it's gonna keep going over, and then it's gonna make your tolerance a little bit worse than doing the inner, outer, and then the infill. That's just based on my experience. The wall loop direction, you can do clockwise, counterclockwise, doesn't really matter. Top surface flow ratio, just leave it at 1 so that it just flow like the rest of the 3D printed parts. But if you want a thicker or you want more ratio on top or on the bottom, you can definitely change these numbers. If you only want one wall on the top surface layer, you can check this box. If you uncheck it, you will have multiple walls on the top surface. One wall threshold is like only a one wall at the top layer, and these three down here, I don't mess with them, and my 3D printed part still looks really good. But if you want to, hover over them and read what it does and check, uncheck, however you like. For this, I believe, if I remember correctly what it is, if the area is smaller like a corner, it uses less material. There's more area for the material to expand. It's gonna flow normally, and then when it gets to corners, it's gonna flow a little bit less material, resulting in a better finish. And then this is your bridging. So let's say for this model, there's a bridge right here. It's gonna bridge over here to this thing, print, and then bridge back. That is your bridging here. If you want your bridge to be good, you can mess around with this. But most of the time, the bridging is being supported by supports material, or you just kind of 3D model your parts to avoid those. But sometimes it is on purpose. So you want to change your flow ratio, thick internal bridge or thick external bridge here, so that it's a little bit different from this point to this point, and it will make your bridge a lot cooler. If you are doing those print that has lots of bridging. Overhang, it will detect overhang walls, and then it will try to slow down a little bit for those overhang or generate supports for those. We are done with the quality print setting. The next one is strength. For strength, I don't change a lot of them, but here are the things that I change the most. If you want a thicker parts, you can change the wall loop. So what is the wall loop? We can slice the plate again. And this is your wall loop right here. The yellow and the orange, that's your wall loop. 3, so 3 here. We change this to 8. It will have a really thick wall loop with basically no infill at all. As you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wall loops here. So that is your wall loop. You can do extra walls here, or you can detect thin walls, and if the wall is too thin, it will just convert both of the wall into one. Your top and bottom shell. So that's your first bottom layer and your last top layer. So as you can see here, we have 1, 2, 3, and then it starts doing the infill. That is your bottom layer shell. Same thing for the very top here. 1, 2, 3, and then the infill. But here we have so much wall loops. Here, 1, 2, 3. That's your top shell layer. The thickness of it, it's 0.6 at default. If you want to change that, you can do it. The pattern here, you can change to all these kind of patterns. So it's just the monolithic line here. It's just left and right. If you want to change it to something like this one right here, this one is really cool. It's gonna change in a different way like that. It's gonna do, look at that. It's printing in circle, which looks pretty awesome to me. If you want to have a different first layer, you can do that. Or the top surface, you can also do that. So that's your top and bottom show. The next one is the infill. The infill is the red thing. When you click slice plate, we can see that it's your dark red. That's your infill. The first one is your infill density percentage, so 20%. That's about 20%. The next setting is the pattern. You have all these patterns here. You can choose any of them to have them for your infill, but I recommend 3D honeycomb. That is the best infill for me. So I just use 3D honeycomb for everything. Maximum length of the infill anchor, leave it at 20 millimeters. It's really good. Sparse infill anchor length, 400%. That is good enough. You don't really need to change these two numbers. It's really good as its default. The internal solid infill pattern. So if you set your infill's density to 100%, you click slice, it's gonna turn to purple. So that's your solid internal infill pattern right here. It's monotonic, so it's just like lines back and forth. So that's your solid internal infill pattern. If you want to change this, you can do too. If we do this chord right here again, it's gonna do a circle and it's gonna look really cool, right? So that's that. Apply gap fill. So it's like these teeny tiny gap here. If you want to fill all these gaps, you can do it everywhere. But if you don't want to, just click nowhere. And for me, I have found that nowhere is a lot better than filling it everywhere, because sometimes it's just gonna do like one little drop here, one little drop here, and it's gonna cause a lot of stringing and lots of teeny tiny dots, which is bad for your 3D printed part. So I just put that to nowhere. Filter out tiny gaps, just leave it, because teeny tiny parts, sometimes or most of the time, it doesn't really matter for those. It will just extrude like a bigger line and get rid of that. Okay, the next one is going to be the events, and this one is quite important. If you want to have a different infill pattern, if you want to have a different pattern on your model here, you can change these too. So I'm going to click the top view like this, slice the plate, and as you can see here, the pattern is going back and forth this way. But if I rotate this by 90 degrees or set it to 90, we will slice the plate again. And as you can see here, it's up and down now instead of left and right. So you can mess around with this to get what you desire, and this sometimes makes your 3D printed part a lot stronger. But the rest of these options down here doesn't really need to be bothered with, because these two are the most important in my opinion. These down here are extra stuff. So now that we're done with that strength, next is your speed. And once again, I just want to iterate. If you have your advanced setting turned off, you won't have your speed options. So just leave this turned on. You will have your speed options. You will have everything. So for the speed, you will have first layer speed. For the first layer on PDG, PLA, or many of the, or just like most of your filament, do like 30 to 40 millimeters. If you want to have a world record, you can do it like 200 millimeters per second for your first layer. I tried that and it works sometimes, but it's not the best quality. So just put it at a low number. Your first layer is your most important layer. So just put it to a lower speed and you will be so much more happy. Your first layer infill is your purple infill here. So still, leave it at a lower speed, because that's going to maximize the adhesion that your filament is going to stick to your build plate. That is important. Number of slow layer. If you want more slow layer, you can change this, but I don't want any slow layers, so I just leave it at 0. Initial travel speed 100%, so they just move very fast, print faster. Next one is your other layer speed. So for OrcaSlicers, you have all kinds of speed. Outer, inner, small parameters, infill, internal infill, top, gap, support. You can customize this to however you want. Your outer wall, you can do 20, and then your inner wall, you can crank up to 300 millimeters per second if you want. But usually my outer inner wall, I set it to a very similar speed. Small parameters, it's default at 50%, and I just leave it at that because it's gonna be half of what this is. So it's good. Your sparse infill, usually on your infill, you can go a lot faster because it's on the inside, and once you have your inner and outer wall printed, your infill, it does not really mess that much with your tolerance. So you can go a little bit faster to get your 3D printed part done faster. Top surface is gonna be your top surface. It's gonna be what people see, so you want it a little bit slower to get a better quality. Your gap infill, put it at a slower number because it's your gap infill and you want those gap to be filled properly instead of just like very fast. Support go a little bit slower because it's gonna be attaching to your actual model. And if you print super fast, your support might bond and you will have a really hard time getting rid of your support. So putting support speed at a lower speed, it's a lot better. Your overhang speed here is going to be printing overhang like 45 degrees, 50 degrees overhang. So having these numbers slower like this, 50, 30, 10 millimeters will result in a better overhang print. It's going to print slower, so it's going to have more time to cool down, and the material is going to flow a little bit slower, more time to cool down, resulting in a better overhang print. So I usually just leave this default here. It's really good with these defaults. The bridge, you can change the speed of the bridge. So all of these are just speed. Travel speed is your nozzle movement, like this point to this point to this point. 500 is pretty good enough for most of the 3D printers out there. Some can do more, less, but 500 is a really good point. Acceleration is like zoom, zoom, zoom like that. So then the 3v3 can do about 12,000 millimeters per second square, which is really fast. And these acceleration is almost at their maximum. So just leave these at default and you won't have a problem with your 3D printer printing. And for the jerk, I don't know, try to mess with this. Sometimes I don't really see that much of a difference, and sometimes I just get really bad quality. So I just leave them at default and it works really good. Most of these settings you won't even need to mess around with, just change little things here and there and you will have a really good time 3D printing. The next one is support. So support, there's gonna be a lot more things going on here. If you disable support, you're not gonna have support, right? So let's enable support. And the first thing is your type. So you have 4 options: normal, auto, tree auto, normal, manual, tree manual. What is manual? So if we select tree manual, let's go back to the prepare tab here, select our model, and if we can see all the tools up here, which I will get to later on, we can click this support painting. So I'm gonna paint this part down here, slice the plate. This is my tree manual. Even though right here has overhang, it's not gonna do it because I did not paint that. It's just gonna generate support where I painted. So I only paint it down here and it's gonna generate support down there. If I put it to auto, it will automatically generate the support for me like that. It's still very similar, but those parts that have lots of overhang, you usually want to take the time and to manually paint what you need overhang, because sometimes the slicer doesn't know what is good overhang versus bad overhang. 99% of the time I use tree manual. I like tree so much better than normal now. The next one is the style. If you want a slim tree, you can do that. It's gonna have teeny tiny slim tree like this, less material. Or if you want strong tree, strong support, you can also select that and it's like that. But for this, it's overkill and it's gonna waste so much material. You'll have a really hard time removing them. So default is really good. It has the balance of both enough but not too much. Okay, so angle threshold, it's the angle. Threshold overlap, it's the amount of overlapping that would do on the support. The first layer density is just the first layer density, and expansion and stuff like that. Leave these at default, it will serve you great. The next one is gonna be the wrap. So I usually do wrap a lot when I first started 3D printing, but now I never use the wrap anymore because the wrap here is gonna ruin your 3D printed parts. It's gonna make your first layer stick to the bed, but it's gonna make your first layer look so bad once it's finished. And sometimes you can't even remove the wrap, it's like stuck on your 3D printed part. So put the wrap to 0. Don't use the wrap if you don't need to. Next one is gonna be the filament for support. If you have multiple filament like how I have up here, you can change these like PTG. You can have PTG supporting pure lay, but If your 3D printer don't support multicolor 3D printing, you will have a very hard time manually changing in the filament out and out. If you have something that is very detailed, sometimes you want to do this because PDG and PLA does not want to stick to each other. So by doing this, you can remove the support very easily, leaving minimum scar on your 3D printed part, and you can just have your 3D printed part really good. If it's like PLA on PLA, sometimes it might get stuck and your 3D printed part is gonna be ruined. So that is really good if you have two filament and have the time to wait for it to change materials. And your 3D printer support multicolor printing. So that is really nice. Advanced right here. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I have not messed with advanced support at all in all my 3D printing because the default one, the 3 default one has been really good to me. The only thing that I messed here is the top distance here, 0.2, or I can put it to 0.4, 0.1. That's gonna be where it's gonna be meshing to your 3D printed part right here. So 0.1 right there. That's like very teeny tiny. So most of the time it's gonna stick to your 3D printed part. So I'm gonna put it to 0.4 and see the differences here. Like that, the gap is a lot bigger. And by doing this, it's kind of bad because this is still like overhang here. So it prints, the filament is gonna sag down. It's gonna touch this and bond with it. So it's quite bad. Leave it at 0.2 is good. Maybe if you want to, 0.21, 0.18, stuff like that. Teeny tiny adjustment. Same thing with the bottom Z distance, but the bottom Z distance doesn't really matter. That's like the bottom. It doesn't matter. It doesn't touch your model here. The base pattern is just like this, so don't really need to mess with it. And all of this, the default is really good. I have removed supports very easily with the default version. If you want to mess with that, you can hover over them and read what they are and change them to however you're liking. And down here is your tree support. So if you have tree support enabled up here, you can choose, you can edit your tree support however you like. You can make them bigger, smaller, thicker, whatever you like on your tree support. So that is support. Next one is going to be multi-material. If you are printing with multiple materials, you can come here, enable your prime tower. You will need to paint your model first. So I'm just going to paint that really fast right there. And your prime tower is going to be this one right here. That is going to be your prime tower right there. I don't know why it's floating like that, but yeah, not quite sure why my tower is floating like that, but whatever. Yeah, it's going to be your prime tower right here. You can change the width from 60 to 40 and it will change the shape of your prime tower, making it fatter, but making it less long. So change that however you like. Ooze prevention. This, I don't feel like this is good enough to use the ooze enable because when it's changing filament, it's going to lower your temperature to prevent oozing, and sometimes that is kind of bad in my opinion. It's going to take a lot more time. It's going to keep fluctuating your nozzle temperature up and down all the time, and yeah, I don't feel like that is good. Most of the time, when printing with multicolor, it will retract and then go to your 3D printed parts, and then it will put in the filament down. So this doesn't really need to be enabled, for in my opinion at least, but if you want to, go ahead and do it. These events down here, you can go and read them and see exactly what it does. The flush option, advanced beam interlocking, stuff like that. It doesn't really need to be used. Just enable this, change the width, the brim width, a couple of things here, and you are good to go with multicolor. Others. So here is your others, like your skirt, your brim, special mode. Skirt is your skirt. For I don't know why I used skirt back then, but now I don't use skirt at all because there's really no reason to have this skirt. It's just waste of time, waste of filament. So I don't have this skirt anymore. But if you still want to use the skirt, you can just have one skirt, two skirt, however you want. And these setting here doesn't really matter because it's not touching your model. I don't know, for me, I just don't use it. The brim, sometimes I use it, but I usually do outer brim only because I don't want to do inner brim, outer brim. I'm gonna have to remove the brim later, and sometimes the brim stuck so well to your parts that it has extra filament sticking out and you have to get rid of that. But if your part has tiny contact with your bed, Brim is good options to have. You have many options down here. Painted, you can paint your own brim now, which is amazing on OrcaSlicer. Next one is special mode. Special mode is how you want to print. Slicing mode, you have regular, or you can even on, close hole. You can use even on for airplane models, or close hole to close all the holes in the model. If you created the hole, you want those holes on your model, so don't really need to change that if you needed to. Print sequence by layer or by object. So by layer is exactly what it is. Layer by layer, it's printing like that. But if we change this to by object, so if we change that to by object, it will have this purple parameters showing you that this is going to be the maximum height you're allowed to print. And if you have two models, it's going to have this huge circle saying that that's my area. You cannot come into my area. If you put it there, it will not allow you to slice, because it says that if you print this model first, then you print this model, your print head is going to knock this model down and it's going to be very dangerous. You usually need the similar height model to print this. So look at this, it's going to print one model and then it will go to the next model and print that. So that is print object. For this, it's complicated to make the circle a little bit smaller. For this, you might only be able to have 4 models here, but if you want more, I feel like just do by layer and just have a lot of them here and just print all of them at the same time, which is still similar to the by object. Then if we come down here, spiral vase, if we enable that, yes, it's gonna change all the settings too. Spiral mode, you can just print with one object. And yeah, it's gonna do that. It's gonna print the outer walls only on the spiral mode. It's really good for vase stuff like that. So that's why it's spiral vase. So if you are printing vase, then that is a really good option to use. Fuzzy skin, you can use contour hole, or all walls. So we're gonna click all walls, and OrcaSlicer just add all these amazing options here. So you can select any of the options, print, and look at your model. It's gonna look like that. So the reason why it looks like that is because we changed this to spiral vase. So I'm gonna reset everything, and now we can look at the fuzzy skin. It's gonna make these fuzzy things on your 3D printed part. It's gonna be like a vibration of your print head, and it's gonna make these cool outer fuzzy things on your model. So that is very cool. But if you want a precise model, that's not really good. But if you want a cool looking model, fuzzy skin is good. Next one is gonna be the G-code output. For this, just don't mess with it, because if you mess with it, it's gonna cause lots of problem, and it's just generating the G-code. Well, that is a lot of information on the print setting. And yeah, most of these settings doesn't really need to be changed. You only need to change those that are really matters in your models, and take the time to learn them. It will be worth it. So the next thing that we're going to go through is the prepare tab here, all the tools on top of here. So the first tool is add. So if you click this, it's going to open up your file browser, and you can add model into OrcaSlicer. The next option is add plate. It's exactly what it is. Add more plates like this. And to close them, you just click the X next to the plate. The next tool up here is auto orient. I love this because if you load it in your model and it's like this, right? You can just click your model, click this, and it will automatically orient it to the best ability it thinks that it is. For this model, it thinks that this is the best way to do it. Most of the time it's really good, but sometimes it does this. And if you don't want this, you can click your model. You can rotate them, but it's gonna be hard. So what I usually do is shortcut F, or you can go up to the toolbar and click this one, lay on face. Click that and all of this option will pop out. You can click on one of them and automatically position your model to whatever piece you click it. That's it. So that is really good. The next tool is arrange all objects. So let's say we have 2 objects like this, and maybe you want to arrange them like this, or you can just press A, click arrange here, and it will automatically arrange. Or another way you can do it is Control A, select all of the model, click A on your keyboard, and it will do it automatically, which is so amazing. For the next option here, we can see split to object. So what is that? Well, if we only have one model here, this option is not enabled. If you load in two models at the same time, it will give you this warning here. Load these files as a single object with multiple parts. If you click yes, both of them will be a single object like this. And now this option will pop out. So if you click this, it will separate both of the model to a separate model, which is amazing. So for the split tool part here, I haven't really get this option to work at all, but I did found some people did. So let's say you export a file that has many parts together and it's a single STL file. This option will pop out and you can split them into single parts. It's different from this because for this, it's different STL files. It's the same STL file, but you're just splitting the parts, which I assume are not touching each other. So I think that's what the tool is for. I have not got this to work at all. The next one is variable layer height. So imagine a curve, right? Like the curve right here. If you change this here, it's gonna have more layers, making this curve smoother. But I don't know why every single time I try to change this, I always get this error. I have not got this to work at all. I don't know why or how this works, but essentially that's that. These curve layer, if you select them like this and you move them one side, you can see that there's more and more layers coming out. So let's say for this curve, it's gonna be 3 curve and then it will print the top here. But if you add more like this, it will be like 10 tiny curve and then it will go up. But I never get it to work. Even if I just change a little bit here, I always get this error and it never works for me. But that's basically what it is. Then the next one is the move tool. Simple, you just move them X, Y, Z. The next tool is rotate. You can rotate them back and forth, X, Y, Z. The next tool is scale. You can make them big, small, stretch, tall, whatever you like. The next tool is going to be lay on face, which is a really amazing tool because let's say sometimes you rotate this and it's not exactly flat like this right now. This part is like up a little bit. You can just lay on face and it will just lay it flat for you, which is amazing. The next tool is cut. You can just cut your 3D printed part into 2 separate parts and you can print them like that. How cool is that, right? Mesh boolean, I have not got that to work at all too. I don't know how this tool and this tool work, but hopefully you can figure it out. Next one is support painting. This is where you will be painting your material. So you click your material, you click the paint support here, and here is all the tool types. You have circle, which you can paint like this. You have the sphere, which is similar to circle. Fill, you can just see the highlight, click, and it will just fill everything. Or you can do the fill gap, which is like teeny tiny gaps and fill it up. But most of the time, this is not being used. I 99% use the fill tool here, unless it's like a really high quality model where I need to slowly paint stuff. I will activate on overhang only, because if I don't do that, it will paint everything. Smart fill angle, I usually just leave it at 30 because that's good enough. Highlight overhang, this is the angle of the overhang that your model is gonna be. So 45 is what I do most of the time. Sometimes I do 35 because I will know that my 3D printer can do 40-degree overhang. Sometimes do 35, but most of the time I do 45. I activate this because even though it highlights this, you click this, it will paint everything. But if you select overhang only, it will just do those red parts and it's gonna make your life so much easier. Even though if you paint them over like this, it's just gonna be painting the part that is highlighted, which is so amazing. Section view is just like cutting out the part in half like that. Section view like that. So that is really good. The next tool is the seam painting. I usually was a big guy on seam. I want my seam to be gone, but over the years of 3D printing, I kind of like the seam now on some parts, but not most part. But you can paint your seam like this, you can paint your seam like this, however you want. You can paint your seam like that and it's gonna do that. So let's slice like that. your seam is gonna be like that, how you paint it. But these days, seams are really good, so I don't even paint the seam at all. The next option is color painting. So some of you are like, how do you have color painting? I don't see it on my options. Because you only have one filament. I have deleted all my filament except one, but you can't remove all filaments. So I have one filament. I click my object. Yes, I don't have the painting tool. So in order to get the painting tool, you need to add a second filament, and then the painting tool will pop up. And now you can color your 3D models like this. Circle, sphere, triangle. So it's gonna do the triangle like this. I don't know why it's laggy like that. You click, do that, and then you let go, and it will paint everything. The next one is gonna be the height range. This one is very useful. Let's say you only want these to be painted, right? You can just highlight that, click, drag up, and boom, only those parts are painted, which is really cool. And you can also increase the height range like this. You can make it very big, each section like this to be a different color. You can do lots of things with that. The next one is fill. So you can fill in these sections here. You already paint like this. You just want the section to be filled. So you just clear this, fill, and it's gonna fill everything like that. Not the inside though, only the outside. You can see that it has a highlight white there. That's the part that it's gonna paint. But if you increase the smart fill angle to 90%, it's gonna fill lots of stuff. It's gonna basically fill almost everything like that. So leave this at around 19 to 30. It will really give you like a good angle. So if I have a small layer like this, I can go over to gap fill, and then look at that, it's gonna fill that, click apply, and it will apply that to it. It's like teeny tiny small gap fill here and there. So let's say you're painting something in there like that, and you miss like a teeny tiny gap, right? You can click gap fill, and it will automatically apply that to that small gap where you can't see it, which is very nice. Next one is the tool emboss. So you can emboss text into your model just like that. But usually if you want to do this, I would do it in my 3D modeling software instead of doing the emboss here. But maybe if you download something online, that is something that you want to do. Next one is just measurement, right? Click points here. Those is about 0.7 millimeters at a 97-degree angle. You can just measure stuff here and there. Assemble, you can assemble two pieces, but I haven't really done this yet, so I don't know how this works. The last one is just got added to the version 2.3. It's the brim ear. So if you have small content with the bed, you can paint this here, paint this here. Go into your other setting, the brim type, go to painted, and then click slice plate. Look at your model, and it will have those brim ear that you have painted exactly where you put it. So that is really nice. Assemble view, you can assemble stuff and view it here, but this is not like the proper example to show you. And once you have everything done, you have a couple options. You can print, or you can export your G-code file to a SD card or a USB drive, and then put it to your 3D printer and print it. Or you can just click print, name it however you want, switch to device tab after this option. You can upload, or you can click upload and print, and it's gonna upload directly to your 3D printer and print. So that is pretty much it with OrcaSlicers. All the tools, all the settings and stuff like that. Yeah, that is pretty much how you use OrcaSlicers from all these features. And now I'm going to be showing you the calibrations. So earlier I tell you guys that if you want to change your flow ratio in pressure events, you can do it here. But before you mess with those numbers, you can go up to calibration up here. You can do a temperature test for your filament, PLA, PDG, or anything. You can set your start temperature, your end temperature, and then the temperature step, and it's gonna go up by 5. Just do this, click OK, and here you can save or discard. I'm just gonna click discard, and it will do everything for you. You don't need to mess with anything. So once you have this, just go ahead and print. Don't mess with any other setting. And now you have a temperature tower. You can do a flow rate. Here's a flow rate. You can do one pass. it's gonna look like that. You click slice plate and then you can print this. I will leave a link down below for the flow rate test so you can do all your calculation. And once you have done that, you can go back to your filament and adjust your flow ratio right here. Same thing with your pressure vents is right here. Pressure vents, you can do a PA tower, line, pattern, whatever you want to do. Select your extruder type. DDE is direct drive, extruder or bolting. Your motor is like way back there and it's gonna have a bolting to your extruder. So for me, it's gonna be a direct drive, and then select my method right here. If you want to change these, go ahead and change them to a PA tower. And now you'll be able to do a PA tower here. Print this, follow the directions, and then just calculate your pressure events. But for me, I like to do the line. The line makes it so much easier, so much better to tell. It's like that, right? But if you click slice plate, it's gonna do these line here. I love this test the best. Then once you've done that, go to your filament, enable pressure vents, change this number to whatever you have calculated. You can do more retraction tests, Orca tolerance tests, and even more, your maximum flow rate and your VFA. And click here for all the tutorials for all of these. Okay, so for an extra tip, which I told you guys earlier that I'm going to show you, is the maximum volumetric speed. So back then, why can't I get this speed to print faster? It's because my max volumetric speed is very low. I'm going to be putting this at 3 here and come to my print setting. I'm going to crank everything up to 300, 300, 300 just for fun. Click slice plate. But when I go and see the speed here, look at this. The maximum speed is only 49, but my speed here is 300. What is the problem here? I was like, why can't I get this to print faster? I was so frustrated back then. But then I figured out that it's the maximum volumetric speed. I'm going to increase this to 23. Click slice plate. And look at this. Max speed is 300 now. It's going to be printing so fast now. It'll be so amazing. So your maximum volumetric speed has a huge play in your printing speed. Wow, that is a lot of information for one video. So I hope you learned something from this video. If not, replay the video and read carefully what the settings are. I would be really appreciated if you leave a like on this video, subscribe to this channel, because this took a lot of work. Comment down below what do you think about OrcaSlicer, and are you using it? Is it good? Is it bad? That's gonna be it for this ultimate guide for getting started with OrcaSlicer. Well, that is lots of information in one video, and I hope you learned something new or learn more about OrcaSlicers, how to use it. I would be greatly appreciated if you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, comment down below what do you think about this video. Did it help you get a better understanding of OrcaSlicer or how to navigate through the slicers itself? And also, do you like using OrcaSlicers? OrcaSlicers is my go-to. Is it yours? That'll be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep on 3D printing.